So making home here at 9,000 feet means dealing with 9,000 foot density altitude. And while this means my lungs have to do a little bit more to match my energy output, this video is going to highlight all of the factors that you need to know as a newer pilot in this type of environment. I'm going to cover all of the flying factors that you need to be aware of, from energy output to how to trim the glider for launch and landing, and everything in between to make sure that you're getting off the ground and then back on the ground in one piece. Sadly, it is starting to rain, so let's go ahead and jump back inside. So the key thing to remember is that it is different. And being aware of this difference before you fly someplace like here will hopefully increase your success rate, confidence, and safety. Man, it feels really good to be making a video for you guys once again. At the end of this video, I'll fill you in on why I have been all too quiet on the channel. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into high altitude flying. So there are 4 factors affected by low air density. The first one here will have you checking that you didn't put your propeller on backwards, as your motor simply is not generating the power you're used to. There is now physically less air to mix with the fuel in your combustion chamber to generate the power that you're used to, and this will result in noticeable power lag as well as torque overall. Number 2, making matters worse on the motor front, is that your propeller simply is not impacting the air molecules that you're used to, resulting in less push from that motor. Third, your wing needs to cover more distance over more time to generate the speed that is required to both inflate the glider fully and eventually get you airborne. And the icing on the top with number 4 is that your body is going to suck at making up for this lack of power and lift. Partly, and I would say mostly, due to high density habit, but also the lack of acclimation that your muscles will have. So with these factors identified, let's go over how we can adjust the physical traits of both our motor and glider, as well as the technique differences that we need to adjust as the pilot. Addressing item number 1 and 2 on our previous list, I would like to mention that if you are a small engine pilot but foresee yourself flying at higher altitudes like here, I would highly suggest going with a bigger one. My personal example is that I was super thrilled with the Atom 80 at 155 pounds in Florida, but that simply was not an option up here. So we switched to the Moster 185, and it has served us very well up here, as well as being a thrill to fly back down at those lower elevations. Another great option you have with the Moster is to bump up to a 3-blade or to get a larger propeller altogether. And to help give you a little bit extra torque on the lower end of the power band, you can get a bigger reduction pulley. So these 3 things, of course, do cost money, but the power authority given by doing so really makes it feel worth it, and it offers a peace of mind to achieve the altitude that we want when we want it. And peace of mind is why we're doing this all in the first place. So in addition to the modifications you can make to your noisemaker, we also need to adjust our fuel air mixture. If you don't do this, your motor likely won't start at all, or if it does, it's going to be gulping fuel like a Bugatti with the taps open. There are a number of great videos out there that I will link in the description below to tune your motor correctly regardless of the altitude. Just note that when you go up in elevation, you want to reduce or lean the fuel going into the mixture. To address number 3 with the lift factor, there are a couple of solutions that we can do to get things flying a little sooner. Similar to the motor situation, you can actually buy a larger glider as well, as the increased surface area is going to generate lift at slower speeds. This requires less of your legs and body, which of course is a welcome aid. For example, if I was still in Florida, I would have bought the Kona 2 22 meter instead of the 24, but with this elevation, it was just gonna be a lot easier to get airborne with the 24. And you really don't feel a huge performance dip with the larger wing, with the air density being as low as it is. But having this larger wing really helps the wing get through that power zone, the initial inflation portion, and once I get the glider up to speed and I achieve full power, I'm usually off the ground in pretty quick succession. The other solution I recommend is to set your trimmers a little differently from sea level. Having my trimmers set just a little further out from where I would at lower elevations I find that it aids in a couple of things. The first is that it helps the wing get off the ground and through the power zone, where if you had your trimmers set in, it would really try to lag in that power zone, and it takes a lot more effort to get it through and into that locked overhead position that we know and love. Just be aware that with your trimmers set out, the wing is going to have a greater tendency to overfly you, so a quick pump of the brakes to keep the wing in check to prevent this is likely going to be necessary for you. And finally, to address the pilot factor, these tips are a little bit more ambiguous and you might find something to be helpful way more than another, but here are my tips regardless. Number one, of course, is to drink more water. Get some electrolytes in there, and something I learned recently is to regiment your intake to 8 ounces for every half hour. Supposedly this hits the optimum hydration nail on the head. Regardless, chugging a liter right before clipping in is probably going to hinder your performance. My second tip is that once you arrive to your high altitude location, go for a solid 3-mile walk or hike to help shock your lungs into an acclimated state. And my last tip in this category is just before your launch, take a few minutes to pre-breathe. With launching being such an intense and concentrated energy output, I find that this exercise really primes my muscles for optimum performance. So for 30 reps, I will pack my lungs full all the way and then slowly exhale everything that I can, and then more so to prepare for that next full inhale. This is going to really oxygenate your body and you're going to feel energized and ready for the challenge ahead. Hopefully these 3 tips prevent you from getting exhausted just by putting the motor on your back. Before we dive into the technique adjustments, I owe an immense thank you to the supporters and sponsors of this channel that have subscribed to me over on Patreon. It has been over a month since I last published a video, and not a single one of you has canceled their subscription. It really shows me how dedicated you guys are to the message and purpose of this channel, and it helps keep this fire going for me. Thank you all so very much. The first link in the description below will warp you over there and guide you through the very quick and easy process of getting signed up and subscribed if that is of interest to you. So on to high altitude piloting techniques. The main thing you should know as a pilot flying in a low density environment for the first time is to revert back to beginner brain. When you took your first flight, you likely used a lot more energy output than you really needed or was efficient for your launch. But with repetitions, you learn to dial that energy output back to this sweet spot of energy output. Along with this, you found a certain cadence that became standard and habitual to your mind. This is of course a great thing, and it really helps to have your brain dial it back a little bit and let your muscle memory sort of take over so that you can both relax but also stay very aware of what is happening. But then there you are at the Buena Vista fly-in with your propellers sprinkled all across the field, trying to figure out what the heck went wrong on what was going to be flight number 225. The most common mistake I see as a result of high density habits is getting in that seat way too early. They are usually red in the face when they take that invitation that is so taunting, that comfort and reprieve that the harness seems to offer. But while your wing is above your head and your legs are telling you that you're going fast enough, in reality, the glider is not ready to hold you and the weight of the motor combined. So channel your inner David Goggins and keep running. But on to some glider tips now. The habit to fight on this one is to apply pressure gently and later on. I still will occasionally make the mistake of pulling a little too much pressure, and doing so can cause the glider to pitch back into that sketchy parachutal zone. So trimming out, as I mentioned previously, will help prevent this from occurring. But as a pilot, you need to make sure that the glider has enough speed, more than what you are used to at the lower elevations, before you start testing the waters with that brake pressure. Otherwise, you'll look like that guy that looks like a wet albatross barely clearing those trees half a mile away from where he inflated. So once that glider is overhead, think posture, power, speed, and then gently pressure. Your legs will be going with this adjustment, but once you have a little bit of speed, they're really not going to be doing much other than keeping you from descending. For the duration of your flight, there are definitely a few things that you should understand to keep yourself safe. 1, your overall speed is much greater. 2, when you come off the power, you are going to drop quickly. And 3rd, you cannot climb out of trouble effectively. Pilots that are unaware of this can get themselves into a lot of trouble, especially flying in proximity with each other or Mother Earth herself. And I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I think we lose a pilot or two every year to this high density habit. For example, swooping too low after a wing over and not being able to power out of that trouble. Again, treat your first flight in an environment like this like it's your first flight ever. It is going to look, feel, and fly differently. Moving on to the landing, the main thing that I recommend is just to remain calm. Again, it's gonna look differently, mainly because it's a quicker landing, but the timing and cadence of your flare should remain relatively similar. I really wouldn't change the altitude that you begin your flare or anything like that. Just be aware of the added speed and take a deep breath before coming in for touchdown. For your trims, I would say wherever you are comfortable with them landing at sea level. And for your leg straps, I would actually encourage you to loosen those up a bit, as you don't want them impeding your stride and landing you on your face. And of course, remember, if it doesn't feel right, just go around. Going around offers far less shame than ending up in the trees at the end of the runway. And that is going to conclude my thoughts on flying where the air is just a little less cushy. And as promised, here is a quick bit on what I have been doing in the last few months. So while I of course love teaching, I found myself longing for a learning experience myself, and ideally one that combines the similar ingredients together that make up the process of learning to fly. A solid hearty base of AGL, the spice of danger to keep you focused and present, and the balance of chaos and order to elevate a level of meaning and satisfaction. Becoming a tree climbing arborist has checked these boxes for me to a T. I've always loved trees, and I seem to have fallen into this presented opportunity in a way that really does not have me looking over my shoulder at all. It has been hard though, and leaving this channel unattended has been a big part of this difficulty for me. But I would like to reassure you that my passion for flying and sharing my experience with you here is not gonna go anywhere. God, this is amazing, dude. This is so amazing. I mean, look at that. That is just so cool. Maybe there will be a new channel emerging in the near future that covers this new career interest of mine. We'll see. I'll have to keep you posted on that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching till the end. It would mean a lot to me if you gave it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, you may consider checking out either of these videos right here, handpicked by the YouTube algorithm bot AI to suit your specific interests. All the best, guys. This is Lifted PPG. My name's Micah Stevens. Don't forget to take that deep breath, and I'll see you guys before too long in the next video. Cheers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.